The charges which men lay to the account of fortune I would consider to be the highest encomia in her favor. For example, the inscrutable vicissitudes in their affairs they ascribe to her, and whenever they unwisely set their hands to certain projects and meet with failure, they imagine they have been robbed of their purposes by her, since, in their opinion, she could do anything and everything if she only would. Again, you may hear farmers, shippers, and men of wealth blaming her for their loss of money, dandies for their persons, Panthea for her husband, Croesus for his son, Astyages for his defeat, and Polycrates for his capture. Moreover, the Persians blamed fortune after the slaying of Cyrus, as did the Macedonians after Alexander's death. Furthermore, men even reproach fortune for some of their own emotional weaknesses. Medea for her passion, Midias for his prayer, Phaedra for her false accusation, Alcmaeon for his wandering, Orestes for his madness. But I'll tell you also a certain Cyprian tale, if you wish. The days of old produced women of distinction as well as men. Rhodogune, the warrior, Semiramis, the queen, Sappho, the poetess, Timandra, the beauty. Just so Cyprus, too, had its Demonassa, a woman gifted in both statesmanship and law-giving. She gave the people of Cyprus the following 3 laws. A woman guilty of adultery shall have her hair cut off and be a harlot. Her daughter became an adulteress, had her hair cut off, according to the law, and practiced harlotry. Whoever commits suicide shall be cast out without a burial. This was the second law of Demonassa. Third, a law forbidding the slaughter of a plough ox. Of the 2 sons which she had, the one met his death for having slain an ox, while the other, who slew himself, she refrained from burying. Now for a time she not only bore with fortitude the loss of her children, but also persevered in her regulations. But having observed a cow lowing in sorrow over a calf which was dying, and having recognized her own misfortune in the case of another, Demonassa melted bronze and leaped into the molten mass. And there used to be at the place an ancient tower holding a bronze image, an image embedded in bronze, both in order to ensure the stability of the statue, and also as a representation of the story. And nearby on a tablet there was an inscription, "Wise was I, yet in everything ill-starred." Well, then, let not fortune be condemned unheard, and let us not fear the clamor of those who accuse her, for perhaps even she herself might aid us somewhat in speaking well of her. In the first place, the artists are believed to have revealed her power by the way they have equipped her. For to begin with, she stands ready for her tasks. Secondly, in her right hand she holds a rudder, and, as one might say, she is sailing a ship. But why? Was it in the belief that sailors, more than others, need fortune? Or was it because she steers our lives like some great ship, and preserves all on board? The Assyrians until the wanton luxury of Sardanapalus, the Medes until the rearing of Cyrus, the Persians until they crossed the sea, the Athenians until their capture, Croesus until the visit of Solon. At first a fortunate man was Oedipus. Yes, for fortune, trying to provide freedom from suffering, granted him ignorance, which was tantamount to freedom from suffering. Then at the same time he reached the end of his good fortune, and began to understand. For my part, I call even his blindness good fortune. For let Tellus behold his children, and Caidape, and Aeolus, and whoever else may have been fortunate as a parent. Yet by his blindness Oedipus will gain escape from shameful sights. And to resume, in her other hand the goddess holds fruits plucked and ready for use, indicating the multitude of good things she herself provides. This, you see, would be both golden age and isles of the blessed, as it were, with foods for the taking, and the horn of Heracles, and life of the Cyclops, all in one, since to those who have toiled for their living an abundance of good things comes thereafter spontaneously. But Tantalus, you know, was idle in old age. On that account, therefore, he was prosperous only as far as his lips, fortunate only with his eyes, while all those things he longed for, lake, fruits, food, and drink, vanished, snatched away by fortune as by a blast of wind. Again, fortune has been given many names among men. Her impartiality has been named nemesis, or retributive justice, her obscurity, elpis, or hope, her inevitability, moira, or fate, her righteousness, themis, or law. Truly a deity of many names and many ways. Farmers have given her the name Demeter, shepherds, Pan, sailors, Leucothea, pilots, Dioscuri. With ease the eminent he curbs, the meek exalts, makes straight the crooked, blasts the proud. This refers, of course, to Zeus holding in his right hand his weapon, and in his left his scepter, for the reason that to martial men he gives kingship too. Furthermore, Euripides censures the sailor, untimely seeking to cross the broad sea's waves. He also utters reproof in the following when he says, "To slender hopes they do entrust themselves. O son of Nasarchides, you were a poet to be sure, yet not at all wise, for they entrust this life to neither pitch nor ropes, nor is it to a 2-inch plank of pine that keeps them safe. Nay, they entrust them to a sure and mighty thing, fortune. A weak thing is wealth unless accompanied by fortune. An uncertain thing is friendship unless fortune bears a hand. She preserves alike the sick man in his extremity, the swimmer amidst the waves, Agamemnon sailing with his 1,000 ships, and Odysseus drifting on his raft. What dost thou fear, thou craven? Dost fear the vastness of the sea? Poseidon indeed will spy thee, summon his winds, seize his trident, and stir up all the blasts. Yet he will not slay thee, for fortune wills it not. Thus do thou wander now upon the deep with many an evil mischance, till the day when thou dost meet with men, beloved of Zeus." An utterance of a god vanquished by fortune. What is more, the ancient stock of your ancestors, those Autochtotus and earliest Athenians, who boasted the soil as mother, Demeter as nurse, and Athena as namesake and ally, fortune first led forth from Athens to Euboea. But since, if they remained there, the sea could not please them, nor the land support, and since also they could not endure the disgrace of what had happened, their having turned islanders instead of occupants of the mainland, fortune made a second and better plan. For though Euboea is truly a venerable island, still who among you ever was able to endure dwelling in a rugged land, or being neighbor to narrow waters and subjected to many shifts of condition, more numerous than the shifts of current in the strait? At one moment you must needs endure the Boeotians and the stupidity of the Thebans, and the next it was the Athenians who treated you no longer as sons, but rather as slaves. So it came to pass that the goddess took and established you here, with one of her hands contriving and directing the voyage, and with the other abundantly providing and bestowing her fruits. Now, the idea in what yet remains to say, it is difficult to portray. But as for me, O Mistress Fortune, for to thee no doubt my words would justly be addressed, if someone should raise me aloft and transport me through the sky, either as it were on the back of some Pegasus or in some winged car of Pelops, offering me the whole earth and its cities, neither would I choose the luxury of Lydia or the thrift of Attica or the meager living of Laconia, nor would I choose Croton or Sybaris, because they do not toil, or the Scythians, because they do not farm, or the Egyptians, because they farm for others. And Libya, where the lambs have horns at birth? A shepherd's haven? No, I would not choose Egyptian Thebes, which hath 100 gates, and at each one 200 men go forth with chariots and steeds, a life for grooms and gatekeepers. In Delos such a tree I once did see beside Apollo's altar. An altar does not satisfy my want, since I have naught to sacrifice thereon. No more do trees, if they afford no food. 'Tis rugged, yet a goodly nurse of youth. This land not only is not rugged, but a nurse of youth besides. O Athens, august mistress of them all? Say not so, fellow, those Athenians no more are masters. How beauteous too thy shipyard is to view! Nay, rather say ugly, after the Hellespont and Lysander. Piraeus is a lovely sight. Yes, for your mind's eye still sees it with its walls. What other city yet obtained such groves? It did have, yes, but it was ravaged, and, like a woman in her mourning, it had its tresses shorn. For climate, so they say, 'tis nobly set. Indeed, how so, since they are subject to plague and sickness, and more of them are slain by their climate than by the foe? Now, let no one be vexed that I speak thus for his forebears. We could not attain first rank in any other way than by competing with those who are first. Why, not only did a certain warrior of old take pride in having proved superior to his sire, but even for the Athenians it is no disgrace, ancestors of ours though they be, to be outstripped by their sons, for they will share your merit while being surpassed in their own. How, then, could you help being grateful to fortune for all of this, both for parentage, in that you are Greek, and for your changed condition, in that, though once poor, you are now prosperous? Socrates, at any rate, counted himself fortunate for many reasons, not only because he was a rational being, but also because he was an Athenian. Diogenes the Cynic, on the other hand, with boorishness and downright discourtesy, was wont to rail at fortune, claiming that, though she shot many shafts with him as her target, she could not hit him. I cannot endure a philosopher's behaving so brazenly. Do not lie about fortune, Diogenes, for the reason why she does not shoot you is that she has no wish to do so. On the contrary, if fortune did wish it, she could easily hit you wherever you might be. While I don't use those pithy, laconic expressions, slaves to the Persians, Dionysius at Corinth, Socrates' condemnation, Xenophon's exile, Pherecydes' death, luck of Anaxarchus. Still, let me ask you, with how many shafts has she hit this difficult mark itself? She made you an exile. She brought you to Athens. She introduced you to Antisthenes. She sold you in Crete. But if staff and wallet and a meager, simple mode of living serve you as a cloak of affection, you have fortune to thank even for these things, for it is by grace of fortune that you practice philosophy. Again, there was once an Athenian general, Timotheus, who was fortunate in everything and could not stand being made the butt of jokes. And one day he committed some act of effrontery against fortune, and in turn he began to be unfortunate. Who would have ever expected that a barber would become ruler of the Indians, that a shepherd would become king of the Lydians, that a woman would become leader of Asia, that a tunic and a woman would cause the death of Heracles, that a slave and a goblet would cause the death of Alexander? The explanation is that fortune herself has within the essence of royalty ever in fullest measure, and she destroys those who exalt themselves unduly. For instance, Alexander did many daring things. He cannot stand being called the son of Philip. He lied about Zeus. He scorned the Dioscuri. He abused Dionysus, though indulging so lavishly in that god's gift. Moreover, he slew his savior, Clytus, and the handsome Philotas, the aged Parmenion, his teacher, Callisthenes. He aimed to slay Aristotle and had planned the death of Antipater. Therefore, fortune made him, while yet alive, admit that he was a human being. At any rate, when he had been wounded, he said to his friends, "Why, this fluid which I behold is not ichor, but real blood." But by his dying, he admitted fully that fortune is a mighty being and truly invincible. At any rate, after escaping from the Theban hoplites, the Thessalian cavalry, the Aetolian javelin throwers, the Thracians with their daggers, the martial Persians, the tribe of irresistible Medes from lofty mountains, impassable rivers, and unscalable cliffs, from Darius, Poreus, and many other tribes and kings I might name, yet in Babylon, remote from battle and from wounds, our warrior died. But what should one say of those who took over his empire? Or those who followed after them with their braggart titles, thunderbolts, takers of cities, eagles, gods? One of the lot's death proved mistaken. Another found fortune to be a loftier being than himself, though he had considered her pedestrian. Our taker of cities, Demetrius, was taken captive and died a shameful death from wine and drunkenness, beleaguered as he was by fortune. Why, then, are tyrants proud of their ramparts? Why does Amphion sing, Deioces toil, Semiramis build, Apollo work for hire, Meles encompass the wall with his lion? For Cyrus will master the Medes, Zopyrus the Babylonians, Amardian, Sardis, and the horse Troy. Yes, as someone has put it, fortune is a great weight in the scales, or rather the whole thing. She found the infant Pindar lying exposed in Boeotia, Telephus in Arcadia, the kings of Rome in Italy, and to Pindar she sent honeybees, to the kings of Rome shepherds, to Telephus a deer, and to Cyrus either a dog or a woman. Eumenes was a wagoner's son, but for all that he became king. Heracles was Alexander's son, yet he did not become king. In fact, his body, denied the rites of burial, was brought to Olympias, and after mourning for him, she too died. A god's mother, forsooth. Moreover, the mother of Darius made obeisance, not merely to Alexander, but, what is more disgraceful, to Hephaestion. What about the king of the Libyans? Did he not sack 500 cities of the Romans? Did he not lift up his tunic and display it to his fellow townsmen, filled with Roman finger rings, each of which he has had as loot from foes that he has slaughtered? Yet, after he had done all this, he met an ignominious end, having contended much with fortune all in vain. This, it seems to me, is why men entrust all their important matters to fortune, making their public offices and generalships subject to allotment. Brothers also divide their patrimony in that way, and so Polynices too, if indeed he had been well advised, ought to have drawn lots with his brother for the throne. But as it was, not only was he himself slain, he destroyed his brother as well, all because he referred a matter to priority of birth, and not to fortune. Now shake the lot in turn and see who draws, for the well-grieved Achaeans he will aid. And having drawn aid he did. However, Hector was defeated because he trusted to judgment, and not to fortune. For on his threshold Zeus has set 2 jars. These are storage jars for mankind in the keeping of the gods. However, it is fortune who administers them with regard to what is allotted, to orator or to general, to rich or to poor, to old or to young. To Croesus she gives gold, to Candaules a wife, to Peleus a sword, to Nestor a shield, to Pterolus golden locks, to Nisus a purple tress, to Alcibiades beauty, to Socrates wisdom, to Aristides uprightness, to Spartans land, to Athenians sea. Then in turn she takes from these and gives it to others. And it seems to me that the life of man in its daily vicissitudes is in no wise different from a procession.